be about 15, 20 seconds. It'll be live on YouTube. And you can start off. And we are good, Martin, so you can take over and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Ron. It being 6 p.m., I call the regular board meeting of the Wenatchee School District on Tuesday, the 14th of September to order. I would like to open this meeting by saying that we are a community of neighbors, parents, and volunteers. The board is a member of civil society charged with and dedicated to the well-being of all our students. As we move to saying the Pledge of Allegiance, I read from the oath of office taken by each member of this board before a Chelan County judge when they assumed their duty. The oath affirms to support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington, and to promote the interests of education, and to faithfully discharge the duties of office according to the best of his or her ability. And now I would like you to join in making the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first business item of tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. There is one change. We have a request to hold the meeting minutes of the 24th of August for further review and to present them at the next board meeting. The other items in the agenda, consent agenda, are vouchers and payroll, the personnel report, the surplus report, the contracts as listed, the annual fee schedule, the Wenatchee School District's CTE four-year plan following its presentation at a prior meeting, and the Wenatchee Valley Tech Center's four-year plan. Those items are in the consent agenda. Is there a motion to propose the consent agenda for approval?
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda, Martin, with the item of the minutes removed as you noted.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
I will second.
Was that Laura?
I think it was Julie or Laura.
Julie, I count you as seconder. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? In that case, I will do a roll call vote, and I will begin by asking Maria, please signify A or nay.
A.
Laura.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
And I am also aye. The motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item is an enjoyable one. Employee recognition. At that point, I hand the meeting over to Paul.
Martin, thank you. Yes, tonight we've got the great privilege of recognizing 4 of our employees for statewide recognition. So first off, and a few of them are with us tonight, and if anybody else joins us, Ron will let them in. First off, we'll start off with Teresa Godina. She's the Washington State Migrant Recruiter of the Year. Teresa was chosen to receive the Washington State Migrant Education Program's Recruiter of the Year Award. This fall marks Teresa's 8th year as the Wenatchee School District's Migrant Recruiter. She has a total of 12 years in the migrant education, including time as a family advocate. Teresa is no stranger to the experience of migrant students. 30 years ago, she was in the shoes of these families as she served, as she arrived in Wenatchee from Mexico with her oldest son. From personal experience, Teresa knows that when families have support from school personnel, parents feel more confident in approaching schools and get more involved in the education and success of their children. She says the most rewarding part of her job as a recruiter is being able to help migrant families and watch them celebrate their children's academic success. We are so proud of Teresa and all of her accomplishments. I don't see her here tonight, but again, huge congratulations to her. What a great honor to be chosen as the state award winner. Next, I would like to recognize Veronica Mendoza as the Migrant Student Advocate of the Year. Veronica has been selected to receive the Washington State Migrant Education Program's Migrant Student Advocate of the Year Award for the 2020 and 2021 school year. Veronica has worked at Mission View Elementary for over 20 years, most recently as the school's family advocate. A quote from Jeff Jager, the Mission View principal: "Veronica is the heart and soul of our school. She builds strong connections with our families and community to support student success." I'm not surprised she was selected for this honor. It was so well deserved, says Mr. Jager. Veronica, congratulations from all of us for your accomplishments on this well-deserved award. Next, we have Tina Nick Pan Brown, the North Central Washington 2022 Regional Teacher of the Year. Tina was selected a fifth grade remote learning educator at the Wenatchee Internet Academy for the Wenatchee School District as the Regional Teacher of the Year. Tina is now eligible for state honors, which they were just conducted yesterday. Unfortunately, she was not the state winner, but Tina, anyone who knows Tina and the work she does, knows she is an absolute force for the good of kids in education. Tina leads our classroom instruction by focusing on drawing connections to the students' family, internet interactions, culture, and the community. She begins with a science standard, then incorporates reading, math, writing, social studies. She then layers in engineering, art, technology, and inclusionary practices. Finally, she involves the community with field experiences, career connections, family involvement, and expert interviews. Tina was one of the 3 elementary science teachers in Washington who've been selected as a state level finalist for the 2020 Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, the highest honor bestowed on science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and computer science teachers. In her 20 years as an educator, with 17 years of that service being for our school district, Tina has brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money and STEM opportunities on a district-wide level. And we're super fortunate to have Tina here with us. Tina, do you want to say a few words about your incredible experience?
I absolutely do. Thank you. I first want to say thank you to the board for approving the consent agenda, which included another $2,500 of STEM funds for the Wenatchee Internet Academy. So thank you for continuing to support my grant work so that I can continue providing experiences for students. I had a fabulous 4-day weekend in Olympia and Seattle with the 9 regional teachers of the year. And I have learned so much about education around this state and have already been given several platforms in which to speak about the importance of STEM education and student voice at the elementary level. So I look forward to speaking with all of you individually and as a group about the work that I hope to pursue this year, and also about the Wenatchee Internet Academy in the very near future. Thank you to Dr. Gordon for always allowing me to take some of these crazy ideas and turn them into reality. I do appreciate all your support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's easy to support greatness. Next up, Doug Merrill, who literally is a legend in this school district. I've only been here for a few years, but Doug's imprint on this district is far and wide, and I really blessed to have been able to get to know him these last couple of years. But Doug, the Wenatchee High School engineering teacher, received the Legacy Innovator Award on September or will receive the award on September 29th from NCW Tech Alliance. The award will be presented as part of the Tech Alliance 20th Annual Innovator Award Celebration, designed to honor innovation in technology, entrepreneurship, and STEM education. The legacy winners were selected by the NCW Tech Board of Directors from a pool of about 70 individuals who have won awards since they were introduced in 2001. Doug, a STEM engineer teacher at Wenatchee High School, we'd be honored for his accomplishments in STEM education during a virtual ceremony. He received the 2013 Innovative Use of Technology in the Classroom Award, and since then has continued to cultivate and champion STEM education through teaching and community partnerships. Doug Merrill, everybody. Doug, a few words.
Thank you, Superintendent Gordon and board members. Appreciate this time just to be recognized by my peers. Is more valuable than you'll ever know. And so was with this award with Central Washington Tech Alliance. Jenny and Farah and Annalie and Jeanette and Camille, everybody down there, they are looking out for such innovative things. And I see it in their businesses, their entrepreneurial activities, and then to be lumped in there with that group and with a lot of fine educators was a real treat and a real surprise. And so I'm happy to represent Wenatchee School District and everybody that is involved with STEM education. And you guys, what I value most about Jake Buchholz, my CTE director, and everybody else, is that you really remove the barriers for us to really be innovative. And I think that's what has helped all of our programs. Tina sends these kids into my classroom that they're not just nodding their head at the right time with engineering speak or STEM speak. It's like they're already pushing me. It's like, hey, well, what about this? We did this in Ms. Brown's class. And so it's like, oh, well, we will add on to that. I will make sure. And so she helps along with so many of the teachers in our district, getting those kids ready to come into the high school. So thank you to them.
Doug, thank you. Board members?
Yes, time for board members to offer accolades and appreciation.
Congratulations to everyone. I will just say that you all are my heroes. I had the honor of nominating Doug Merrill for his very first Innovator when I was on the Guada board years ago. So that was a huge honor, and I'm so glad that since I left that board that they have continued to appreciate his excellence. And Tina, you are always my hero. I'm so inspired at the lengths to which you go to use your imagination to inspire those young students and minds. And to Teresa and Veronica, kudos to you as well. Thank you for reaching out to that population in our district that so often doesn't get the attention that it is due. So appreciate you working with those Latino students. Good job, everybody.
Yeah, I will echo what Laura said. And what's really awesome about these 4 recognitions is that it's just an example of how great our district is. We have 2 certificated staff being recognized and 2 classified staff being recognized. Again, it's our service of just all of our students in our district. So this is really a great representation of our entire district. I'm always amazed at the work Mr. Merrill and Ms. Pam Brown does. I follow you guys on all these cool videos that you guys do and what the media exposure that you guys do. And I still hope my kiddo gets you guys. So Doug, you can't retire until Noah makes it to high school. So thank you for the work everyone does. And again, good job, WSD.
Yeah, I'll echo that and say congratulations, and really proud of you all and impressed by your effort. It's very inspiring to have so many great educators and participants in the district. I love that you're not stopping, that you're continuing to achieve and go after more grants. And build your programs. And I think that's truly inspiring. So I really appreciate that work, and great job. There's great things to come from our staff at the district, it sounds like.
Well, it's quite a banner year to have so many award winners at this meeting. So, what a way to kind of, although we know we still have COVID challenges, it is such a great thing to have, Teresa and Veronica getting these state awards, and then Tina and Doug getting these so relevant jobs in this day and age. And, again, all of you, and I'm sorry that Teresa and Veronica couldn't come, but all four of you are just amazing. And I just am in awe of the work that you all have done. And I'm guessing that your collective time, I didn't write down all the numbers, but it's significant, can we say, right? It's well over 50 years probably together, everybody's time. So lots of experience among the four of you, and just looking forward to your continued great track record in the future. So thank you, and congratulations to all four of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you all four directors. I want to add my 2 bits as well. The 4 employees we've just recognized have given extraordinary work to students and the district. And I think, as Laura said, the benefits from their work flow upwards. It goes from the district to families and the community. And I wanted to add, I've got a short personal story about each one of you 4. And I think it's so important because they show how special you and your achievements are. Veronica, you were a leader and advocate when we worked together somewhere else over 20 years ago. You brought that same leadership and advocacy to Mission View, where I had the great pleasure of becoming reacquainted, crossing paths again, and seeing your good works. Doug, you've already had the word legend used once for your reputation for engineering, innovation in engineering and technology education. But I want to talk about the character development aspect of what you and your colleagues do. Picture a small custom vehicle with unique controls and mechanisms, doing wheelies on the Pioneer gym floor, driven exuberantly by a special needs student. That car was built for him. Or seeing a toy designed with an on-off switch so that somebody who is confined to a wheelchair and can only work things by pressing with their head can turn it on and off. That kind of character goes together with the engineering excellence, and it's a tribute to you and your colleagues and your students. I'm moving on to attack Tina now. I have 3 daughters, so I'm a fan of empowering women, but especially where it comes to science and mathematics for girls. This is only one of Tina's constituencies. She does a lot of different things in a lot of different arenas. But I want to say that I seldom have had as much fun at a school event as when your Lincoln 5th grade girls in science group hijacked me and made me their pet guinea pig for their experiments. So that kind of excellence really goes a long way. And Teresa is the recruiter who quietly and often unseen finds students who need to be coaxed one way or another into greater school participation. You recruit adults as well as students. At the last board meeting, I did not report on the invaluable 3-day conference of the State Advisory Committee on Migrant Education that I attended. My involvement in that is entirely Teresa's fault. I'm deeply grateful to her for recruiting me just the same way she recruits students. So 4 people pushing good things upwards from themselves through the district and outbound. Thank you.
Thank you all. You're difference makers. Thank you.
We now come to the point in the agenda for public comment. Individuals who signed up to provide a public comment will be given 3 minutes to speak after identifying themselves. The timer, I believe Kim will operate it, will appear in the Zoom meeting window. I should notify you that, or let you know, the board chair may terminate a statement when the allotted time has passed, or may interrupt a speaker to require the same standard of civility that the board imposes on itself. If something happens, the board as a whole shall have the final decision in determining the appropriateness of any ruling. I should also notify you that the board is not obligated and does not respond to questions or challenges made during the public comment period. Interpretation services are available for individuals whose native language is Spanish and speaking in Spanish that can be translated to English. The complete meeting will be translated into Spanish and provided with the board meeting summary later this week. We have received requests for citizen comments in English to be translated into Spanish. As I said, we provide this in the audio video recording of the board meeting and will do so, but we are not able to translate live from English to Spanish. So at this point, I will turn it over to our gatekeeper, who can notify me who is about to speak, and I will welcome him.
Okay, so we have quite a few tonight. I'll read their name. As I do that, I'll pull them over from attendee into the panelists. So if you're speaking tonight, you'll turn your camera on, turn your microphone on so the board can see and hear you, and then you can start your comment. Your timer will start once you get established. Our first up tonight is Milo Clanky. And let me go grab him out of the attendees.
Oh, okay. Hello.
Welcome, Milo, and we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I really showed up to observe the meeting more tonight, but I also just wanted to say personally that I appreciate the board. I know that there's a vocal minority that would advocate for you to endanger our students, my grandchildren's health, and I just want you to know that there is a large number of citizens that have your back and that you have our full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Milo.
Okay, next up, Nicholas Belanger. Okay, gotta navigate this here. Here we go, coming in.
And welcome, Nicholas. You're still muted, and you have the floor.
Hello. First off, I would just like to start out by saying thank you for all of the board members and educators and superintendent for being here and supporting our community and supporting our staff. I'd also like to piggyback and on Milo's comment and thank him for his vocalizing in support of what you all are doing to keep our community and our students safe. I didn't know exactly how I wanted to say what I wanted to say, but listening to the opening comments made by staff in recognition, some things came to mind. And as we're going through these turbulent times in our community, and a lot of changes are going to happen this year, and we're going to be faced with some really tough challenges within our community, and you as a board are going to have some tough decisions to make of balancing needs of the students and needs of the community of which elected you. I just wanted to say, that I was reminded of why we're all here and our constitutional, commitment to serve all students and making sure that all students have a fair and equal opportunity to education. And as recognized by the paraprofessionals working with migrants, that's just a really good reminder that is our duty, is to make sure that we ensure a safe environment for everyone to learn. And then also just, I heard a great reminder of, the work and dedication that the staff does. And I think that they oftentimes go underappreciated for the hard work that they do, the professionalism that they bring, and the dedication that they bring to our children. They spend more time with our children than many of us are able to spend with our children throughout the day. and they are faced with the challenges of dealing with, not only teaching academics, but also teaching and building our students to be good, active members of our community, being servant leaders of our community, as many of the teachers are, and as you as board members are. You guys are serving, working as a leadership, as servants of our community, as you are elected, and which I'd like to thank you for. And I would just like to close with saying that as it is our teachers' duties to build strong community members, I think we really need to look at and evaluate what we're listening to and what we're allowing in the decisions that are being made. Looking at the science and taking emotion out of things, and just really making sure that even if we do disagree with decisions that are made, making sure that we are acting responsibly and appropriately in how we come up with these decisions. And it is a very sad moment that we are here online related to.
Running over now if you want to wrap up.
All right, I'm all done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much then.
Okay, next up is Megan Castillo.
Good evening.
Evening, Megan, and go ahead.
I have a pop-up here. So my name is Megan Castillo, and I'm a reading specialist at John Newberry Elementary School, but I have spent more time being a substitute so far this year because we've had so many people out with COVID. And I don't know if you are all aware, but many of our best substitutes are retired teachers and fall under the category of being very vulnerable to COVID consequences and outbreaks for that. And so there are a couple things that I wanted to talk about tonight. And first of all, I beg the community to support masking. I work with a lot of vulnerable children, some of whom have chronic illness, asthma, diabetes, some of whom were born very prematurely. And frankly, it's a miracle that they're here at all. And none of them have been eligible for having a vaccine yet. So the only way that we can protect kids is to mask. And it's very frustrating to feel like we are being put up against and fighting instead of working together with some members of our community. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was social and emotional learning. And I just wanted to say that it is such an important part of our daily time with kids. This is a very stressful time for everybody, but particularly for children. And if you have any concerns about the SEL curriculum, I would invite for you to come in and look at what's in the curriculum. And if you have any questions or concerns about it, to talk to your child's teacher. It really is just about friendship and kindness and communication and character traits that make a good, solid citizen and person in the world. And it's this is a stressful time for kids, and they're having mental health struggles. And I think of our SEL as one of the things that we're doing to hopefully prevent things like suicide in the future or Sandy Hook Elementary in the future. We're trying to take care of children's emotional needs. And in conclusion, I would just say that please work with us. We love your kids. We want to teach face-to-face. We want the kids to be there face-to-face with us. And we're all on the same team. It's Team Kid. The teachers want to do the very best thing for students. And I know as parents, you want the best things for your students as well, or for your children as well. And so I would just really invite us to be calm and have some common sense and communicate about some of these things that are causing stress in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan.
Next up is Graham Stansberry.
Welcome, Graham.
Hi, hello, how are y'all doing? So my name is Graham Stansberry. I teach science, and I'm an intervention specialist at Westside High School. And I want to echo everything that's been said. Yeah, I have quite a few points, but the main thing is that I completely agree with everything that's been said. And I want to thank the board for following the CDC guidelines, following the state mandate, and honestly, following evidence-based science to keep us all healthy. It's not, I just want to make it clear to the community that we're a community and public schools are part of a community. It's not just one child or two childs or three childs. It's all of our kids, and it's all of us teachers, and it's all of us parents. And we really need to look at that in the broad scheme of things, because like Megan was saying, that if one teacher gets sick, then we need to get a sub for extended period of times. We don't have that many subs. And if enough teachers get sick, we don't have subs to fill the classrooms, and substitutes are amazing, but they're not the best substitute for the quality teachers that we have in the classroom. And so all of these guidelines that are mandated to us are here to protect us and to keep our kids in the building, getting that quality education. And the last thing I want to do is to go back online. Just like I was really sad. I showed up in the parking lot to go to the meeting tonight, and I was like, oh, then I realized why we're here. And I was like, wow, I would not tolerate that behavior in my classroom. So why is that role modeling happening at this level in our community? It's really perplexing to me. That's part of it, but I also want to address the board on policy 5252P about staff expression and participation in political activities. I know I'm a few weeks short on this with the discussion on it, but really my main point is I really hope, and I read through it, I tried to understand it the best I could, and here's my concern. My concern is I want to make sure that students' identities and family identities are not controversial issues. It's extremely important. There are many kids that are not in the dominant white, heterosexual, Christian upbringing that are not represented in our curriculum. They're not represented in our classrooms. They're not represented in our school buildings. And if for some reason that is controversial to some families, that is not, somebody's identity should not be controversial. Somebody's family makeup is not controversial. It is who they are, and we need to represent that. And so I'm hesitant about this policy because I don't want it to be a backdoor to implicit or explicit discrimination. So that's my worry, my concern. I just want to pass that on to you guys about how you handle this, because the language is very vague, and I'm not sure if it's going towards any certain event, but I am concerned. So thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
Next up, Eric Ballard.
Eric, I see you're muted and no camera, just so when you're ready, we'll welcome you. Eric, go ahead when you can unmute yourself.
We good now?
Good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. My name is Eric Ballard, and I'm a CPA. I live in the Lower Sunny Slope area, and I started in public accounting a few years ago, and then moved back to Wenatchee after also teaching at, excuse me, Eastern Washington University. And I now work in the private sector here in the Valley with Ballard Ambulance. So most of my comments and questions will be regarding financial matters, in reference to the board budget presentation on August 10th. And so on August 10th, the board talked about the CARES 2 and 3 level funding, which total almost 19 million. And it was stated that some of these funds have been spent already, but there was no clarification as to how much or where those amounts have been spent, and then how much was left, or where the remaining amount would be spent. It was stated that there is a multi-year plan that can be presented at a later time to the board once we have more solid numbers as far as what we are planning. So my question in regards to that is, do we have a timeline of getting the multi-year plans? And is there going to be a detailed breakdown showing where the spending will be going? And then also, will these funds be used to help students who are struggling the most and at risk, both educationally and with regard to mental health? Are some of these funds going to be used for funding additional tutors or parapros and staffing to address learning loss from the at-risk students who fell behind during the pandemic? And then working at Ballard Ambulance, I've seen, and we as a company have seen, a massive increase in mental health transports of the youth in our valley. And so my question is the Wenatchee School District partnering with Catholic Charities and their designated crisis responders on how to work together for the students who are struggling with a mental health crisis? Can some of this COVID funding be used in that partnership to help protect our students who are suffering from mental health crises? And then finally, looking at the 4-year summary in the budget presentation, I see that over the next 4 years, we'll be receiving less and less revenue funding. Is there a plan in place for addressing this in the budget and building a plan accordingly? So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your questions, Eric.
Next up is Rachel Petro.
Hi, sorry, I'm in a bit of transit tonight. Good evening. My name is Rachel Petro. I am super disappointed that we're online again. Our kids are back in school. Our spouses and colleagues are back at work, and here we are on Zoom. I think we all know how much energy and communication is facilitated by being in the same room. You know, my understanding, based on what I've seen online and in the paper, is that there was a threat made to the board. And if this is indeed a credible threat, it's really crucial that law enforcement identifies where the threat came from and also determines whether it really is credible so that we can move on as a community and meet in person. Again, I just think it's super critical. About every day, I think of questions that I should email you all as board members. And thankfully for you, I don't have time to do that. So hopefully some of the other members of the public will bring those to light today. I did have another person in my neighborhood who wasn't able to speak tonight, and I cannot see the timer, but I'm pretty sure I'm under my allocated time. So I'm just going to share those if that's okay with the chair. I can't see you.
A malfunction on the timer, so we'll estimate.
Oh, okay. Well, this won't take very long, Mr. Chairman. So this says, good evening, school board. I have a quick comment and request for you. I'm writing to ask that you please follow up on the recent threat made on Craigslist that resulted in the board meetings being moved to Zoom. Threats of any degree should not be taken lightly, and if it was serious enough to force online meetings, it should be pressing enough to find out where the threat came from. In my opinion, Wenatchee School District would be setting a precedent that threats are tolerated. If there are no consequences, we're setting ourselves up for unsafe situations. I think it would set a necessary example for that our district takes threats seriously. I cannot think of a reason why the district would not be pushing to find out where the threat came from. And that's from Stephanie Bradshaw. So anyway, I'll conclude my comments because I know that there's other people to comment, and maybe someday, maybe I'll just make a to-do list and start emailing all my questions because I have lots of questions, but I did appreciate the teacher recognition. You know what? I have seen some of my children's past teachers in the past couple of weeks and have really made a point, like I sometimes do with veterans, to thank them because they've made a difference in my children's life, and they are pretty much, we've been really blessed with some great teachers. So kudos to the teachers who were awarded tonight, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Next up is Matt Van Bogart.
Welcome, Matt. You have the floor.
Great, fantastic. First off, yeah, I'd like to echo Rachel's congratulations in terms of the staff that were granted awards this year. I think it speaks a lot about the commitment that our teachers and staff have for our kids and our community. So congratulations and thank you for that. wanted to kind of pre-read out the recovery plan that's going to be presented by the superintendent here shortly. Yeah, I'm glad that a plan has been put in place. I'm a little surprised and maybe slightly disappointed that it's one page. There's a lot of detail I think that needs to be flushed out of this recovery plan. And as a parent who have kids that are slightly behind in some classes, I'm concerned that there's not a lot of detail. There's no timeline. And I'm surprised that it doesn't actually acknowledge the fact that there has been a significant gap or loss in what we call seat time. And I think in order to correct, some learning issues or learning loss, we need to call that out, and we need to be specific in terms of, recognizing the fact that there is a gap, understanding what the current state is, as well as understanding exactly where we need to go in the future. So I am thankful that there is some work that has been done in terms of putting this plan in place. But I would encourage the board, I would encourage the superintendent to take some steps and actually get more feedback. Circulate this out into stakeholders, talk to students, talk to parents, talk to other community members, reach out to other districts and understand exactly what they're doing. I spent about 4 hours yesterday perusing some of the other districts, and it's not uncommon to see 20 to 25 page plans. I'm not suggesting that's what we need to do here, but in my opinion, a better plan begins with clear goals, objectives. There needs to be a timeline. We need to exactly understand what our current state is and understand what the future state needs to look like, and make sure that we have a plan in place to address exactly what that looks like. There needs to be stakeholder input. There needs to be public comment and review. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to look at addressing gaps by grade level. And there needs to be more specific milestones and check-ins incorporated in the plan. Last but not least, and I'll refer back to what Eric Ballard had mentioned, is how much is this thing going to cost? How much money are we going to invest in the short term to make sure that this plan is successful? I don't think we all believe that this can happen for free. Let's take some of the CARES money. Let's take some of the funding that we have and throw resources at it. I'm not suggesting we hire a bunch of heads to do that, but let's look at short-term opportunities to staff up or to hire contractors or some way.
You can wrap up. You're kind of in overtime now.
Okay. All right. So that's it. So I look forward to understanding what the next steps of this plan look like. And, there is a vast community out here willing to cooperate and help in terms of making this thing successful. Thank you.
Thanks for your input.
Okay, next up, Brian Higgins.
Hello there, my name is Brian Higgins. I teach English Language Arts and AVID at Wenatchee High School. I live on South Methow here in Wenatchee. First off, I just want to say congratulations to Teresa, Veronica, Doug, and Tina. Fantastic job. You're all superstars. So congratulations. Well-earned accolades. But I want to talk about some other employees in the district. It's just fitting that I happen to be speaking at the meeting tonight where you're already celebrating employees. I had the fortune to be at the Chelan County Fair this last weekend. And something that I think we take for granted sometimes are the investment that our ag teachers have in our community. Specifically Dan Elwood, Matt Asplund, Hannah Schneider, whom I all saw at the livestock auction where they encouraged me and helped me feel confident enough to buy 2 pigs. But the amount of work that goes into doing the beginning of a school year as a teacher, on top of helping to plan the fairs, the local fairs, is pretty amazing. So I just want to make sure that they're publicly acknowledged, and that's what I'm going to do. The other thing is I am very appreciative of some changes that have made to the district website lately, especially creating access for our families who don't speak English. The majority of my students come from families who speak Spanish at home, so it's very helpful. And due to the work that you've all helped with on the website, we've made some major changes to the AVID website with the AVID program at our school. And that has come about primarily through the actions of Lori Hunter, the web designer for the district. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the amount of work that she has done for us. With her help, she's taken a vision off paper and made it happen on the website. If you haven't had a chance to look at the Wenatchee High School Avid web pages, I encourage everyone to do so. We have made our entire program transparent for everyone in the community. So if anyone has a question about Avid, they can access all of the information right there. All students can take a look at who their future teachers are for Avid and have months of knowledge about their teacher written through something that we call a culture playbook page. And it is 100% because of Lori Hunter's prioritization of this project. So thank you very much, Lori. I also want to thank the board for doing everything they can to remove barriers from administrators so that administrators can support teachers while we're doing this type of work, which is really bringing information to our community so that they can help make knowledgeable decisions for their kids' education so that they know what's going on in our schools. I know it's not perfect because it's tough to get people to the right spots on our web pages, on websites, but it's already less obstruction now than it was a year ago. And the more that we can remove barriers for those administrators and take work off their plate, the more those administrators can work for teachers like me who want to see major change happen across our district. So thank you so much. And I encourage you to keep that work going.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, next up is Catherine Herzog. Not sure if let me try one more time.
Okay.
She has declined to comment. So that is our last one.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ron, and thank you for all of you citizens who provided input to this board meeting. It's appreciated. The next item is a special presentation on financial literacy. I will turn the meeting over to Superintendent Gordon.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, tonight.
Martin, excuse me, pardon me.
I gotta interrupt.
We had one more speaker.
miss. Yep.
Oh,
Just
okay,
look
sorry.
back at the list. I got to thanks for the chat, Brian, in the chat box. Appreciate that. Brian Hurling.
Oh, sorry.
Over
Yep.
his name for some reason. So let me promote him here real quick.
Thanks, Brian, and apologize for trying to cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's understandable. I'll try to be quick, but I do wish to speak to our community. And we're in the middle of our third major wave of COVID. The Delta variant is ravaging our community, including our school-age populations, at rates that we have not seen before. It takes with it health and occasionally the lives of people that we love. Every member of this community bears a responsibility to work together to put this pandemic behind us. Every one of us needs to find ways to limit our risk. Our schools are doing incredible jobs at working within the guidelines developed by experts. We are modifying what we do as we learn more about the science behind this disease. Let us never forget that COVID is the enemy, not each other. There is no us versus them at this time. There's only us versus COVID. COVID is our enemy. I understand some of the frustrations of our members of our community who have lost businesses and business because of rules and regulations imposed by Olympia. I have family members who have suffered this fate and are mourning that significant loss. I have family members who have suffered socially and psychologically from the distance imposed by our necessary changes to social gatherings. COVID is our enemy. I'm glad to see the protests dwindling in size. I pray that we continue to grow and change and recognize that this is a fight where we all share responsibility. We cannot fight this fight with half of the members of our community not joining in the work. I'm glad that businesses are no longer shuttered by hasty, ham-fisted proclamations from Olympia. The vaccine mandate is exactly the opposite of those edicts. It is based on the best wisdom of public health and has proven its effectiveness. All but those medically prevented should get the vaccine. Only those members of our community who have refused all other vaccines should seek religious exemptions. All of us should wear masks when outside our houses. These are the most effective tools we have to combat the spread of this disease. The science behind these safety measures is unassailable. There are many lies surrounding these facts. We reject those lies that pit us against one another. COVID is our enemy. We can save some lives by being cautious, but we can do better. Other parts of the state have significantly lower rates of infection and hospitalization. This is largely due to increased vaccination rates. The vast majority of people hospitalized due to COVID have not been vaccinated. The burden we are foisting onto our healthcare workers is enormous. We are forcing them to shoulder our burdens, and they are begging us to shoulder that load ourselves. We can do so by getting vaccinated and encouraging others to do so as well. To all of those working to save our lives in healthcare, I give you my undying thanks. It is not enough. You represent the best of us in these hard times, and your glory will not be forgotten. COVID is our enemy, and you are fighting for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
And there is actually one more, Martin. Eric Chase.
Okay. Welcome, Eric. If you can hear me, yeah, you're unmuted now, and if you're able to turn your camera on, that would be good. Eric, are you there and ready to go?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
I can't seem to get my camera on here, so. One more shot here.
One more shot, and then if you can identify yourself verbally, go at it.
Yeah. Okay, my name is Eric. I made comment last week, and I appreciate all the comments that have been made so far, and especially those ones who are on the side of the equation that are mask and vaccinate and all that good stuff. And I am on the opposite end, and that's okay. You can say science, 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 and fact, fact, fact as much as we want here, but I could say the same thing. But I do appreciate the comments, and I would love to, debate that, but not at this time. But anyways, I assume that most of you on the board are on the same wavelength there, and I say that because on the last meeting there, we, to begin with, superintendent let those in attendance who weren't complying with the mask mandate to comply. He said it 4 or 5 times, and then when you guys started the public meeting there, there was some dialogue there of why each board member went around and gave an impassioned speech there about the reasons why it was important for those in attendance to mask up, and they had a lot to do with just staff concerns and those at home of loved ones that were vulnerable and all that kind of stuff. And then you guys know what happened the rest of the time, but I'm a little bit confused being on the other side of things, because when you had a recess there where we were supposed to think over our decisions about not complying, there's quite a few eyewitnesses that saw all the board members in the hallway talking amongst each other without masks. And then also there's pictures floating around, and I was there in public at the meeting afterwards where Mr. Gordon was interviewing for KPQ without his mask on, and we're all standing around. So I'm not here to rake you guys over the coals, but I'm not sure. I'm just a little confused. Like, I'm not sure if this is a game or if you really believe it. I get it, because I mean, I don't see the mask being effective, and neither does the CDC. I mean, they have lots of reports in May of this year considering the same thing. But all this angst and upheaval in the community, and newspaper articles and KPQ interviews of a so-called mob disrupting the school board meeting, but that's all predicated on the fact that wasn't the case. And with these pictures I'm looking at right now, I don't understand. I'm just a little confused about
Eric,
passion
over
speeches.
your time, if you can just wrap
Okay.
it up.
Anyways, I care about the integrity and public trust between us and you guys. I do. And so I'm hoping that you'll make some personal and public comments regarding that in the future, so we can regain some of that trust and integrity. So thank you for allowing me to talk, and we'll continue on the meeting here. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for coming to speak. And Ron, we are ready, right?
Yep, unless somebody else pops in there. We had to jump right in, right as I said we were done. So
Well,
we should be good to go.
Well, we're onward to financial literacy.
All right, Martin, thank you. Tonight we have Mike Lane and Director Buchholz. So I'll hand it over to Mike to start us off. Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Jake, I'm going to turn it over to Jake. Jake has been one of the people that's kind of been leading the collaboration in our discussion around financial literacy in our school district. And I know that Eric Anderson and Corey Kalahar are here as well. So I'd encourage them to turn their cameras on so they can help potentially answer any questions that may come our way. So Jake, I'm going to pass it to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, board, for having some time set aside for us this evening. I'm going to share my screen here and get rolling with that. So some of this is, I'm gonna cruise through a few of the slides that are repeat slides from last time. I just kind of left them in there, and it was in the packet as well, but and really focus on the new information that is hopefully will hopefully answer a few of the questions that came up from the last time that we talked about it, and then at the end, hopefully I can answer any other questions that you might have. But in looking at the financial literacy piece, really one of the questions that came up was just around the timeline. I wanted to kind of shed some light on that and clarify that a little bit. So when we look at implementing for the class of 2024, that's our current sophomore class. And so this year, when we look at that class, really, we would count the personal finance course that they took either last year as part of the 2021 year when they were ninth graders, or if they were taking personal finance this year as a 10th grader, because that personal finance class it's going to remain the same that it has been. It's the same information that this year that it was last year and will be next year. During the course of this school year, we would be doing the PLC planning work between the business department and the family consumer science department. Those are the two departments that would take on or that would be responsible for the teaching of the various courses that would satisfy. And so we have financial algebra that's taught through our business program. The consumer economics is a course that very similar to personal finance, but meant for 11th and 12th grade students. And it has an extra piece in it around job preparation, interviewing, internship pieces, and that kind of thing. So that's designed for 11th to 12th graders. That would be an option. Adulting, that's through our family consumer science. Again, that's an upper level course for our 11th and 12th grade students. So, and then the other thing that would be occurring throughout this year is that all faculty that would be involved in teaching the qualifying courses that are not already doing it. Again, personal finance is already being taught by 2 instructors who have already had the Next Gen Personal Finance training. So those who are remaining would receive that training throughout the year in preparation for teaching a qualifying course starting next year. So 22, 23, so this is when they're juniors. That personal finance class remains available as we talked about. And then the financial algebra, consumer economics, and adulting, those come online because now they're juniors and those courses become available to them. And we've taken this entire year, the one that we're in, to make sure that those are all aligned the way that we want them to be for the start of the 22-23 school year. And then lastly, for any juniors who choose to take to go the Running Start path, obviously the personal finance course at the college is available at that time, or they could do it as a senior as well. And then in their senior year, they will just have another year of opportunity for any one of those classes if they didn't take it in the junior year, or if they didn't take personal finance as a freshman or sophomore. There's a question, and just to try and clarify around the concepts that would be taught that are taught in the Next Gen Personal Finance curriculum. And these are them. I don't know if I don't need to read through them, but these are there are 9 units within the Next Gen Personal Finance curriculum, and these are the topics of the 9 different units. Obviously, there's fewer than 9 bullets, but I combined some of them. So, and then really the kind of the next steps piece, or where we're at, is the foundational piece of this, and so putting the personal finance requirement in as a foundational piece that all students that we can anchor to and then build upon. The integration piece is the next step after that, and that's to build purposeful and targeted connection to finances within each program of study. So the idea is knowing how the economy is changing and ensuring that students leave high school with an understanding, one, yes, of the personal finance concepts that are so important to their success personally, but also how can they utilize their knowledge of finances and the financial industry to support if they choose to go into a situation where they're supporting themselves in their own business, whether that's becoming a independent contractor, the gig economy, whatever word you want to use or phrase you want to use. They've got to have that understanding if they're going to be a self-employed individual, which is becoming more and more common. And then finally, the third step down the road is really around, we have the baseline in high school, but how do we push that down into the middle school levels, again, to develop a 2-shot system where we're ensuring that students are preparing for high school programs where they'll have entrepreneurship opportunities within each of the programs. We have some now, and our goal would be to expand that entrepreneurship piece embedded within CTE to all program areas. And then just to clarify, I had this originally, and I don't honestly remember if we talked about the slide or not, so I left it in here. And so curriculum, again, is Next Gen Personal Finance. That's a conversation that we've had with the YASIT board here in town, who is a big advocate for financial literacy education. And that is one that they are very high on and they endorse. And then also just to be clear that this is using existing staffing and just kind of lining things up a little bit differently. So that really was kind of the additional information that I wanted to share. And then absolutely, please, if you have questions, either for myself or Eric or Corey, please ask away.
Does anyone have any questions or want to amplify anything? No, I'm just to make a quick comment. As you know, I have been a strong supporter of this over many months, and I'm just glad to see it on the road and let it go and have people go for it. And by coincidence, the Financial Times, which I consider to be the most important financial newspaper, with all due respect to the Wall Street Journal, in the whole world, just happened to have an editorial on the importance of personal financial literacy about 2 weeks ago. And not only did they have that, but they chose it as their charity of the year for their own newspaper charity. So you're looking at hard-nosed people talking about exactly the same things that the Wenatchee School District program is talking about. And I think it's useful to know that. If nobody else has anything to say, we then move on to the first reading of policy updates. The policy updates are reviewed by the policy committee and by district staff and presented for discussion at a first reading. And following that, if they are ready for finalization and approval, they will go for a second reading as an action item. These therefore are for discussion. And Paul, are you going to lead?
I'll lead us off. And I just want to give my kudos to the team that was just on. Just great leadership in moving us forward in the financial literacy areas and understanding the importance of each student walking out of our school district with having a deep understanding of financial literacy. So kudos to all those who've been leading those efforts. So on to the policy work. The first one is 2331. And this is a companion policy to 5252 that the board discussed at the last board meeting. And board, this is around that staff expression, participation in political activities. As you can see, there was some additional, on the red line version, additional information added to that, which I think brings even greater clarity to our staff of where we need to be at on this controversial issues, guest speakers. This one was worked through with the policy committee and had legal counsel as well. Maria, Michelle?
Is it possible to put those on a screen so that people on at home can see? Thanks.
I absolutely can. Any comment as I do that?
I did not.
Comment from the board or comment from the policy committee?
Either at this point, as I'm trying to navigate by.
Paul, this one was one that we talked about having legal counsel review.
Correct. And the red line version are those additions. So I'm gonna reach out to Ron because for whatever reason, my updated Zoom is not allowing me to share it or show my screen. So if Ron within the packet or Kim, if you could share your screen with it. I apologize. Thank you. If you could scroll down to the next to the policy itself. Perfect.
So I think there was a legal was looking also at the green line, correct?
Correct. Thank you. I appreciate it, Michelle, because that was the ask by board members to add the parents and guardians, and the committee wanted to make sure that that was appropriate, recognizing there are some things that students do have rights for, but from legal counsel, they felt like in this context, this was absolutely appropriate to have that additional in parents and guardians. Michelle, thank you again for highlighting that.
Yeah, Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time on that, on section B of this policy because of that. And that's where we asked legal counsel to look at it. There's Michelle mentioned that there's an age, I think 13 and older, where a parent doesn't need to be, Michelle, correct me or help me out here in regards to medical appointments.
Certain medical, I don't know if it pertains to all medical appointments, but certain medical appointments, minors who are 13 and up do not need parents' permission. So we just wanted to be sure that legally, because students do have significant rights medically, that, you know, they're teenagers, they're starting to make decisions, that we wanted to be sure that we weren't overruling students that maybe wanted to go to speakers that maybe their parents felt were controversial. So
we also looked at the, you know, for the younger grades, as a parent, it's not that parents would be in opposition of the topic, but just as a follow-up conversation to be aware of what the children, what, you know, what presentations are happening, so parents can have the opportunity to follow up if needed. So I think I'm glad council looked at this, and if I am okay going with the recommendation of legal counsel.
Other board members?
So my only comment is on the section appearing in red. I think the change in B is actually good, and I support that. I think parents and guardians should have a right to know what's going on and have their input when it's appropriate. But the second section, I feel like there's two concepts here that maybe need to be broken out. So it says teachers should also exercise special care in how they present controversial issues to students, which are issues that are partisan or subject to ongoing public disagreement in the community, or that would foreseeably cause a substantial disruption. So my concern is, if something will foreseeably cause a substantial disruption, we probably should be avoiding that altogether. So my thought is, maybe this should say something like special care in how they present controversial issues to students, including issues that are partisan or subject to ongoing public disagreement, and should avoid issues that would foreseeably cause a substantial disruption, something like that. Because again, I think if the disruption is foreseeable, we shouldn't be doing it to begin with, because that means we know it's going to happen. But you know, but still suggesting it's okay to have those conversations or those issues that are part of the controversial issue, but they're just not the ones that are obviously going to cause the substantial disruption. Does that make sense? So that's where I feel like there's maybe two concepts that could be separated there, to avoid the ones that foreseeably would cause foreseeably cause substantial disruption versus, you know, just dealing with controversial issues.
Paul, the legal counsel review, our district legal counsel reviewed the section in red as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
So thank you for bringing that up, Julie. And I think I was the person who suggested adding parents or guardians to the notification process, because I feel like that is pretty important. And to me, because we added that and giving parents the opportunity to have that input, I don't know if I feel that it's necessary that teachers should avoid topics that would foreseeably is a strong word, because could foreseeably seems like it fits better there. But that's a tough one, because, as you know, we had a public commenter earlier tonight expressing concern about policy 5252, hoping that student identity and family identity are not viewed as controversial. I'm just struggling with that piece a little bit here in that red section. Would foreseeably cause, we should avoid things that would foreseeably cause a substantial disruption, because I do not want to alienate students or families that are non-traditional in their format. My
And like,
comment.
I think that's what I'm, in some ways, that's the same language that I'm concerned about here, is would foreseeably cause a substantial disruption. Like I said before, if we know it's going to cause a substantial disruption, it's going to implicate the other policy anyway. So could we take out the, or do something with, even if it's could foreseeably cause disruption. But if it's substantial disruption, that's what we basically prohibited in the prior policy. So I don't know why we would, sort of seem like we're allowing it in this one. So I just think it's the way it's written that it sounds like it's allowing something that we know will cause disruption, which is in violation of the policy that a substantial disruption that we know is in violation of the policy we passed last week. So that's where I'm struggling with that would foreseeably cause.
I will add a word now. I was comfortable with this as written because I think it's a two-step process. The teacher is being asked to use judgment as to what could cause a problem and then refer it for a second stage of review. I could see that softening it from would to could, if legal counsel thought that was acceptable, would make it a little clearer. But I think the red, we're dealing with call it hypotheses, and then it refers it to the superintendent. So I think that I am comfortable with including that.
I'm just going to add that I think the reason why we had legal counsel is because we're trying to marry up kind of these policies and making sure that they do align and make sure that the wording is accurate by constitutional law folks. So I am okay with where this is, and I'm glad that the legal counsel also looked at the green insert on B as well, because my concern was, again, if students have rights at 13 in medical capacity, if we're limiting their rights here. So legal counsel felt that was okay. So I'm pretty pleased that our legal counsel has kind of given their blessing on this. I'm not sure that changing a few words is necessarily, I don't think it's a huge impact. I would rather that we move this forward, but if there's a majority of folks that want to send it back with some, some suggested changes, if a majority of the board wants to do that, I'm okay with it staying the way it is, but depends on what a majority of the board wants to do.
I think at this point, I'd ask if any board members do not wish it to go forward for second reading as written.
I do not wish it to go forward as without additional revisions.
Maria and Laura, do you have an opinion?
I would like to see this move forward.
Okay.
I'm okay with it moving forward because I think the addition of the parent and guardian notification is enough. If families really feel like they need that extra communication after a controversial topic is presented, or if they wish to have an alternative assignment, they do have that opportunity.
I think in that case, I would suggest that perhaps we could ask legal counsel if they have any reservations about the word would based on the comments, and if not, refer it for second reading. Okay,
Okay.
next first read.
So the next one is 5011 sexual harassment of district staff. But you'll see this is really some very minor changes. And then what they included in down below, Ron, if you go further down right there under the cross references, really trying to make sure that they have the Title IX cross reference in it, in the policy itself, without having to put the full Title IX language in there, which would make this an extremely long policy. So some minor cleanup, and then the referencing were added to this this policy. Michelle, Maria?
I have nothing to add.
Board?
Anybody
Pretty
else have anything to add?
Okay.
Nope, I think we can move forward.
2020 course design, selection, adoption of instructional materials. So this one as well. This is part of the work that we did on 5252, where we really wanted to make sure it was everything in what Michelle said earlier, it was everything in alignment, making sure that the work was done correctly, and minor other revisions from WASDA as well. So very minor housekeeping. Michelle, Maria?
With this one, we did a little bit of cross-checking in regards to the policy in specifically with the core instruction tier. Where was it? The core, am I a little ahead of myself of the, the core.
No, you're right.
Team. You know, who is represented in this team, and I know we don't approve policy
procedures.
Thank you. But we kind of wanted to double check because it does mention the core instruction team in there. And again, we spent quite a bit of time, even though there was minimal revisions, referencing with our procedure. So I'm good about this one.
And Maria, thanks for bringing that up. We have a robust process that Sarah Wald, Director of Curriculum and Instruction Professional Development, has overseen for a number of years, and it's a very detailed, thorough process that we go through. All right, if there's nothing else on that one.
Sounds like not. Anybody?
Okay.
Okay.
2410 high school requirements. Perfect timing tonight with the financial literacy presentation. So you will see that at both Westside and Wenatchee High School, that they've included the 2 credits for financial literacy and reducing the electives by 1. So they reduce elective and then use that additional course into CTE. But then the other work that I think was really important in the procedure itself, recognizing the board doesn't own the procedures, but really cleaning it up and really making sure that we had a procedure for Westside, which is very different from just the course load into Wenatchee High School. So making sure that those are highlighted in both of those, but then making sure that both had their own standalone procedure. And Mike and Eric and Corey and Jennifer and a host of others have had their hands on this piece and really leading that work. So Michelle, Maria, anything else on that?
Good.
No, I don't think so. I think, the requirements overall for credit have remained the same for those 2 schools. I know that our state requirement for the high school credit is 24 and our high school requires 30. So, and, I know that was kind of gradually increased over time. My only concern, I think, with the 30, and I know we've had the 30 for a couple, I think it took effect last year. But my concern is that, students can earn roughly 32 credits usually, and that That doesn't give them much room in case they have any classes that are incredibly challenging, given the tight schedule. So they could get 24 credits to pass the state, but if they need 30 to graduate the high school. So I don't know if credits can be waived if a student is in a dire situation, but they've met the state 24 credits. So I don't know, Paul, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, the high schools have a little leeway to waive credits, but the Wenatchee High School structure and how they've developed their schedule allows for more opportunities for students to be able to engage in courses. If they did have a challenge or a struggle, whatever that may be, that the schedule itself allows for our students to actually be able to engage in those credits, retrieve those credits without having to go outside of the schedule itself. So the schedule is very responsive to meeting the needs, equitably meeting the needs of our students across our district. And one of those important pieces is with that 24, in a lot of our comprehensive high schools, they also put on the back end of it that your juniors and seniors must maintain a full course load. So although they say it's 24, it is still a significant number of courses, because the downside of just limiting to 24 is we'll have a number of students who are done mid senior year, and some of those other students who could be done even sooner. So we really want to make sure that our students are gauged the full high school experience, as well as making sure that we're supporting our students who may find those challenges, those life challenges in some of their courses. So it offers for both. But your original question was, do we have some flexibility on waiving? Limited flexibility that the high schools do use with great discretion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's it from policy.
Any more questions, comments? Okay. In that case, we move to an action item. The Nutrition Service Employees Collective Bargaining Agreement is presented for board approval.
And I'll have our Executive Director of Human Resources, Kelly Lopez, in a super dark room, be able to just give the board a really brief overview, as the overview is also in the board packet as well. Kelly, there you are.
Yeah. Sorry, I apologize for that.
No, you're good.
As you guys can tell, we have completed negotiations with our nutrition services group. You've seen the contract, you received the highlights. The majority of the highlights are financial. We've agreed to a 3-year term with a 3% increase each of those 3 years. And really that was pretty much the entire contract. And we're just seeking your approval for that.
Do any board members have questions after reading the presentation material? Do we have a motion to approve the agreement?
I'll move to approve the educational services contract as presented, or nutritional services contract. Sorry.
No, I second that.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So we have a motion to approve and a second for the Nutrition Service Employees Collective Bargaining Agreement. Any discussion?
Good work to the team in getting this accomplished, and with little kerfuffle, and we're glad we can move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That's very appropriate, and yeah, appreciate everybody's work for the next 3 years. Okay, I will do a roll call vote then. Michelle, I'll start with you.
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
And I am aye. So the agreement is now approved. And we move on to board communication, which is the time when individual board members may report or bring attention to matters that have developed in their field since the last board meeting. So I open this up to board members. Anybody have anything to add? Going once, going?
I guess I actually expected more people to jump right in. And maybe this is more appropriate, Paul, in your learning recovery thing, but being at Sunny Slope, we've been hit pretty hard with COVID up here and the protocols. So we're becoming experts, but there seems to be some confusion. And what concerns me now is about the learning loss and recovery outlook of it. It's pretty easy at the elementary school. We've got the Zoom. If it's just one kid out, we've got the Zoom kid on the laptop in the class. And I think that's a pretty clear protocol. I think there's been, what I'm hearing now is, fortunately my middle schooler hasn't been through it yet, but I hear it's hitting the middle school now. And there's misconception in the Zoom kid in the class now, because what I'm hearing is it's not happening, and it either has to be parent-student or parent-teacher interaction or discussion, but even then there's some pushback on it. And why that's, I guess, concerning is I don't know if our learning recovery plan addresses a situation where, what if these kids are out for, say, one family has it and you're on these rolling going out, where, if a teacher says, oh, I'll give you the homework when you come back, that could be 2 weeks if you're on the easy end of it, or if it's rolling through your family, that could be a month later. And if there's no Zoom and there's no, you get it when you get back, I'm worried about where that fits in. It was not been my understanding how that was how the COVID protocol worked at that level. So I think clarifying that for the families would be helpful. And then B, I think it exacerbates then our learning recovery issues if we really do have situations where we expected students to be in seats all fall, and really we've got, maybe it's less at the elementary level, but at the middle and high school levels, if there's not this Zoom in the classroom level, what are we doing for those kids? So like I said, it is maybe premature if you're covering it in your learning recovery, but it seems to be a new issue that's really popping up that, I haven't had to deal with that part of it yet, but we're getting good at the COVID protocols here.
Flexibility. So yeah, I think you summarized it well. I think at the elementary, it's a little bit cleaner. It just is. And then I'll ask Mike and anyone else to jump in on this one as well. So we've been working with the protocols around if a student is positive, if a student is out, because that's kind of what you're talking about, Julie, because now we know that's going to be a longer term piece, as opposed to some of our students have been out because our community is doing a really great job not sending students to school with sniffles or those pieces. That's not really where the COVID protocols go into impact. It really goes into effect when a student is positive or a group of students are quarantined. So what we try to do is, first and foremost, is work with so if it's an individual kid, we're working with that family to make sure that when are we going to start it? First and foremost, we got to help the teacher do a quick turnaround, and what does that look like in his or her classroom? And the other piece with being secondary work, it's multiple teachers making sure we have that plan and working with that parent, but really making sure that everybody's clear that if a student's out for a period of time, that this is an option, that it is an option to be able to Zoom into the classrooms. However, we also know that some students have shown significant side effects. So it's not a perfect, everybody gets this one approach. Some students are sick, and just like when pre-COVID, they are not accessing learning right in that moment. But I'm glad you brought it up. I want to make sure Mike and Corey and my team work to make sure that we've got that locked down from that number of days. Because in the pre, it was more close to that 10 days you were out, because that was kind of the standard. Now you have a little bit of time where there's a 5-day one and then additional. So we need to look at our practices and see if we have to pull that back to more of a 5-day, 3-day, where the COVID protocols for that online learning would occur. Mike, anything to add?
Can I just, before we jump to
Yeah.
Mike, because I think if Mike can respond to, because what I've heard is at the middle and high level, some of the teachers have know the Zoom is not even an option.
Mm.
And so if there's some communication occurring at that level, that would be great while it's still early to iron out what that expectation is, because I think that's where, yeah, I understand if a kid's not healthy and sick, they have to do it. I just want to make sure that parents know if that's the option or the expectation, because it seems like there's a little bit of confusion whether that's even it's either required to be available or is available upon request. So yeah, I appreciate the updates on that for sure.
Yeah. So we will tighten that piece up. Mike, anything to offer?
No, just that there are 3 different options that we ask teachers to provide in concert with families, because we know that an automatic Zoom link for a lot of families is not the best solution. And what we found, quite frankly, at the elementary school mostly, is many parents were actually requesting more of a traditional response, which is, can you gather some materials for my child and send them home? Because trying to get, for example, a second grader or first grader onto a Zoom class all day long was challenging. But it has to work on both sides of it. So it needs to meet the needs of the student and the families, but it also has to align with what's going on in the classroom. So frequently there might be classroom activities that don't really lend themselves to somebody sitting in their home and watching the entire thing through a Zoom link. For example, right now we're in the midst of iReady testing, gathering that diagnostic data so we can determine where those learning gaps are. And so if a student is out during that time, whether it's an elementary student where it's a big chunk of time, or a secondary student where it's a portion of potentially their English block class, it would not make sense, it would not be appropriate for that student to be zoomed into the class during that time. So that's why we ask the communication between the family and the teachers, so we can find solutions that are going to be work for both sides, but be supportive of the students' learning and their engagement. So
we'll be back to you. Oh, sorry, Maria.
No, I actually, thank you, Julie, for bringing that up. I think just clear communication in regards to what the expectation is for parents in case this happens, exposure, positives, a teacher positive, then a sub steps in. So I think, again, clear communication as to what the expectation is and what the options. I really commend the district for going above and beyond and meeting the needs of the students, because where we are now with our families and remote, in the case of remote learning, that's not where we were in the fall, where parents were working from home and had a little bit more accessibility to support the children at home. So I appreciate both of those. And another thing that I think this came out on Friday, but the COVID dashboard. I know the district is staffing is pretty short, and capacity is there's not much capacity, but I do appreciate the COVID dashboard coming back out.
Mm-hmm.
And our community can have a better understanding as to where we are in regards to our students and our staff. So anyways, thank you for that. And then on a different note, before we move on to the plan, so if you guys haven't had a chance to go into the AVID webpage for the Culture Playbook page, it's actually really neat. I spent some time in there. Martin's nodding his head, so maybe he's been in there. But it's a really cool model, and I think it would be really neat if this is something that we can get for a lot of our secondary courses. It just provides clear transparency what the teacher is teaching, what their background is, the course. It's really neat. So if you guys have some time just to go in there into the webpage and just really take a look at what I think it's a really good model of where we can go for, our high school courses, even in a middle school level. It feels like you're really in touch with the teacher and the course that the teachers are teaching and what our students are learning. Again, provides transparency for our community to see what our kids are engaging in. So kudos to that program. I think that's it for me.
So I just want to throw out a comment to kind of tag on to both Julie's and Maria's. So, and something separately as well. So I know, Dr. Gordon, you have shared with us that there are a wide range of positions available at Wenatchee School District, part-time, full-time, lots of different departments. So my ask of the community is, if you're looking to make some extra income in a part-time or full-time position, there's lots of different things, and it's right on our website. So I want to see our staff less stressed, because I know they're trying to cover a lot of area and keeping our kids safe, at lunchtime and other times when we're crowded, trying to keep those mitigating strategies up. And I would love to see them have more teammates on board. So if you're thinking about, helping out and getting paid, that would be great. We would love for you to check out the website and become an employee with the district. So that was just a plug. And I did send that to some people who had some other questions about how our district is doing right now. So so I hope it's okay that I'm putting it out there. And then also just to kind of point out the differences between elementary and middle school, high school. Obviously, we know that kids are in typically one classroom for their elementary teacher. So sometimes maybe that's a little bit easier to coordinate on Zoom. But middle school and high school students are going between multiple classrooms. So there would be multiple Zoom times for different classes to different students. So that might be a lot to keep track of. So my kudos to the teachers for trying to make all this work. I know it's a bit crazy. And then the other difference, obviously, is that elementary students are not eligible for vaccination, but our middle school and high school kids are. And I do know that whether a student is fully vaccinated or not can kind of come into play as well. And maybe the staff could say a word about that as well, because there are some benefits to being a vaccinated student if you are looking at school and kind of what the options are. So Paul or Mike, could you comment on vaccination status for our middle school and high school students in terms of exposure and things like that, and how it's a little bit different?
Yeah, and probably ask Kelly to jump in too, as our resident expert on quarantining, all things quarantining. Is Kelly. She just super enjoys that part of her job. But the reality is, if you're fully vaccinated, there are different opportunities for you to re-engage in the learning, re-engage in the athletics sooner rather than later. That's just the reality. Kelly, details behind that reality?
Yeah, if you are fully vaccinated and you're exposed and not experiencing any symptoms, you actually can come back to school immediately. And we're just requiring testing about 5 days after that exposure to make sure that you haven't ended up testing positive. But if you are not vaccinated, you are out 14 days from the date of exposure. And so that's obviously a significant difference.
Thank you, Kelly. Michelle, thanks for the plug on the jobs. There are plentiful. WenatcheeSchools.org. Please log on, check them out. Kelly, in her spare time, actually does her real job of hiring staff.
And I want to thank the district for bringing the COVID-19 dashboard back up this week as well. I had several families reach out to me kind of wondering where our numbers were last week. So again, I know our elementary families are probably a little more anxious about that and would like to see that data. And I just so appreciate that our district is getting that up and running again. Thank you.
Yeah, that huge kudos to Ron Brown, Julie Robinson, our lead nurse, really trying to figure out how best to do it without a whole lot of human touch going onto it and getting it there. And that's where Ron's expertise really was so valuable. So I'm glad it's back up. I'm glad it's fewer human touches and allowing the technology to do its job. Martin?
I have nothing to add except that we are deeply appreciated and recognize that the staff in the district are stretched to the limit and putting in superhuman effort. And thank you. That's all I can say.
Okay.
And with that, we move to the superintendent's report.
So I'll weave a few things in here with the vast majority of the times being spent on the learning acceleration and recovery plan that Julie referenced and a community member referenced earlier. I'm proud of our recovery plan. And why? Because it's based in the research. The best practices of how to accelerate student learning during this global pandemic. It wasn't just reaching in and picking out a few different ideas that we thought were the best ideas. It was really leaning into the research that's linked there in the document about how to go about this, how to do this work really well and really thoughtfully. We spent a lot of time. The board can remember way back to March 2nd at a workshop. We spent an hour and a half with the board. And if you remember, we had a lot of the learning and teaching team walking the board through certain aspects of this plan. One of those plans around our professional learning communities and teachers coming together, and it's around assessment. And it was around making sure that we're looking at the essential learnings. Those are key pieces. And the piece that I love is that it backs by all the research around how do we move out of this. Again, not us just choosing whatever idea that we think is best, but what's the research in this area? And the research is clear. The areas that we've selected is what will make the difference. So as Mike alluded to during the previous conversation, right now we're in the middle of assessment and really making sure that we know where each student is at. This plan is about our individual over 7,000 kids. We don't have state data right now. In the coming weeks, the state is going to do a condensed version of the statewide test that is generally given in the springtime. But if you hearken back to last year, we let the board know that the state was going to push off the assessment from last spring, but move it forward to the fall. We'll also have another assessment in the springtime too, but it's a much more condensed assessment. Our biggest hope is that the data is returned to us quickly. I'll be honest, the state has not always followed through on that. That has been a big hope for many states around the country, from Colorado to Illinois to Washington. I've heard these promises of quick turnaround on data. So it's there. We're gonna presume positive intent that data will be there. But what we knew is that we needed to have a handle on where our students are at and why we're doing the iReady, why we're doing our assessments, why we're making sure that each kid, we know where each student sits, because that's really what this plan is about. And that's what parents want to know. They want to know where their students at. And during those parent-teacher conferences, it's really going to be important that our staff, our teachers are communicating with their parents where their student or students are at academically, and really making the moves to ensure that their students move forward. Part of that plan, as was recognized by community members and others, is the importance of SEL. I forgot the community member or staff member who said this, but this is a critical aspect of learning. As somebody who is a geek on the research in this area, the mind and the body have to be ready to accept the information coming in. If I'm not in a safe space, whatever that is, from family to school to COVID to whatever it is, I'm not going to engage in the learning in the way that I possibly could, at the highest level I possibly could. So our plan is part of that. Our plan also has a way to make sure that we're intervening with students in the moment, during the school day, and potentially before and after school. But the pieces that we've really thought about, and Julie asked this question in a board question around staff. We are going to be hiring additional staff, and we have hired additional staff, especially in the social emotional area. One community member, Mr. Ballard, asked, are we partnering? We absolutely are partnering directly with the foundation that you mentioned, Mr. Ballard, the Catholic Charities, helping us move forward with the social emotional needs. But as the board we recognized last year with the board and the community, Mike Lane, Corey Callahard, and countless others led a district-wide and valley-wide collaborative partnership with Catholic Charities, Confluence Health, all around the Well-Being Project. We are not just leaders in our own school districts, we're leaders in the Valley in recognizing how important mental health, the social and emotional health of our kids. So all these components are critically important to where we're going, what we're doing. But to say it better, we put a video. So Diana's going to play a video. And when we come back, Mike Lane will put greater detail to where we're at and where we're going. Diana, could you share your screen or share the video?
Can you hear my audio?
No.
Okay, let me try it again. Just a sec. As Wenatchee students return to our classrooms, cafeterias, fields, and playgrounds, we welcome them with open arms and know that we must lead with our heads, hearts, and hands. Students come to us with unique lived experiences at different starting points and in need of individualized attention. Our students' differences are assets, not liabilities. Our learning recovery plan is forward-thinking and focuses on each student, the quality of their learning, and their outcomes. This means not slowing down or looking back at lost seat time stolen by a global pandemic, but rather stepping on the gas and removing barriers so each student can achieve their full potential. Giving students targeted support to take on grade level work right away, a research-based strategy called Learning Acceleration, is critical to helping our students at every grade level catch up. To make this happen, we've developed a roadmap to navigate learning recovery and acceleration. Our roadmap relies on knowing our students by name, strength, and need, so we can develop personalized supports to build on individual strengths and improve areas of challenge. There are 5 key steps on the map: student performance data, high-quality instruction and grade-level assignments, belonging, mental health support, and tutoring services. Leverage student performance data. By using early diagnostic testing, we will know each student's unique starting point and target specific areas where they need extra classroom support and additional practice. We will regularly monitor and share student data with families, communicate student progress, and celebrate their achievements. Access to high-quality instruction and grade-level assignments. We're doubling down on supporting educators with professional learning to enhance instruction in the classroom. We'll focus on teaching priority learning standards, creating more time for teachers to fill gaps, and we'll utilize proven tools and instructional technology that adapts to each student's unique learning level. As a result, each student will have access to high-quality, grade-level instruction tailored to meet their individual needs. When students feel safe and know they belong, they're more likely to succeed in the classroom. We will create a thriving environment in our schools by training our staff and leaders in social and emotional learning. We will practice SEL with every student in every school. Connections with mental health support. Undoubtedly, the pandemic has weighed on us all, but students have had an especially tough time coping emotionally. We will connect students with caring adults and mental health professionals who can help at school and in our community. WSD will continue to build and expand public-private partnerships and make our network of resources and information accessible to students and their families. Access to tutoring services. Building on high-quality grade-level instruction in the classroom, we will extend learning through access to free tutoring services. During fall conferences, teachers will have the ability to recommend targeted tutoring support based on an individual student's needs. We recognize the past, but look to the future. And with this roadmap, we will help our students recover and accelerate their learning, overcome barriers, fulfill their potential, and emerge future ready. For more information on the Learning Recovery Roadmap, visit our website, wenatcheeschools.org.
Diana, thank you for that. So we're excited about our plan because again, it's a plan based in the research of what works best. When we talk about staffing, we really thought long and hard about staffing. How do we continue to staff? We do have COVID relief dollars, those ESSER dollars, as was also mentioned in a public comment. And I would highlight to any community member, Jeanette Jeffries has posted on different board meetings actually where those dollars are being spent. You can find those in our board packets. I believe she's made 4 different presentations on those dollars and how they're being spent. But one of the things Cabinet and others thought about as we went down this road was how do we hire more staff with one-time dollars, which is always a challenge. Now these dollars can stretch up to 3 years. We see the vast majority being 2 years. But the reality, I'll give you a reality check in our district. We're struggling covering leaves right now by certified teachers. I don't have community members, to Michelle's point, we don't have certified teachers who are taking on leaves. So part of our COVID dollars, we're hiring floating subs. So every building has subs there because that's just part of what we're doing. We're not able to fill those. We're not able to fill our subs. And as you heard a teacher say, or I believe as a reading specialist say, that they're covering classes. So right now we knew we were going to have some hiring struggles, but we also thought as well, beyond the hiring struggles, not all of our schools are equitably equipped to be able to hire different staff members because we don't have the classrooms. There's 2 elementaries that have 1 or 2 classrooms, but we really did think about that. And that's not an equitable way to address that situation when only a few get something. But the hard reality was we're in a hiring struggle right now within this pandemic on every position we have out there. Every position is a struggle to be hired and to be meeting these needs. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike to talk specifically about the plan itself, and then we'll open it up to board comment.
Thanks, Paul. And we've got Sarah Wall, Amber Burks, and Corey Callahar with us here too. So I'm going to encourage you to turn your cameras on so you can join the conversation. So Paul did a great job of talking about the plan, but I just want to highlight a few additional things. When you hear learning acceleration, I think potentially there is some confusion around that. Looking at the potential for gaps in learning, why are we talking about acceleration? Why are we not talking about filling those gaps, taking care of those gaps? Learning acceleration, one way to look at that is as kind of the opposite of what a traditional mindset might be around remediation. So for example, if because of COVID or any other circumstance, you may have missed some seat time or you may have missed some content, one way to approach that would be to say, okay, we're going to pause on teaching grade level content to you. We're going to get you caught up on anything that you have potentially missed. And that seems to make some sense. But the reality is while we're pausing that, we're potentially removing you from a classroom and putting you somewhere else to get you caught up, you continue to miss the grade level content. And so it becomes this cycle of never actually achieving getting caught up because you're never exposed to grade level content. Learning acceleration is about jumping into grade level content from day one and then using that diagnostic data to identify where the learning gaps are, prioritizing our learning standards to such a degree that there is some time built in for teachers to address any potential learning gaps as they encounter them in the process of teaching grade level standards. That's at the heart of what our learning acceleration and recovery plan is all about. As Paul said, we are in the middle of getting our iReady diagnostic finished up. I was just in a class, I believe a second grade classroom at Mission View today. And that's a class who had already completed the iReady testing, and the teacher was doing additional data gathering by sitting down and doing individual reads with each of the students so that next week they will look at creating those intervention groups, those flexible intervention groupings, and really kind of flooding what they call flooding the block with as much support, whether it's through certificated support or through our paraprofessionals to get kids caught up in those groups where they can get the additional support that they need to move on with their grade level content. SEL, I've said before, and I will just reiterate this because I believe it to my core, that one of the silver linings of COVID was the renewed emphasis around taking care of and paying attention to the social and emotional well-being of our students, but also of our adults. Our parents, our community, our teachers went through the trauma of COVID right along with our students. So we have renewed that emphasis. Paul mentioned the well-being partnership, which will continue with our partnerships with Confluence, CVCH, Catholic Charities, and Children's Home Society. And then I'd like to expand a little bit on expanded learning opportunities. We're referring to it as tutoring. The team referenced the research around tutoring. And quite frankly, the research behind tutoring is not all that strong. Frequently, it's not all that beneficial for improving student learning, especially student learning gaps. The times when tutoring is beneficial, there are two key components to that. One is that the tutoring occurs frequently, meaning almost on a daily basis. And the second component of that is that the person providing that additional support or that tutoring has a deep knowledge of the content that the student is working on. And so for those, we let those kind of guide our work. And so we are excited to be unveiling a tutoring plan here very soon. We're going to do so in partnership with our after-school program, our Century 21 programs that we have at our schools. We have secured an additional grant that's going to allow us to provide after-school programs to all of our schools, meaning the schools that currently do not have those programs will be having those programs. It also means that we will be able to provide transportation after school for any student participating in these programs at every one of our schools. The additional component to that, not only are we including more sites on the after-school program, we would be paying our own teachers to provide that certificated teacher expertise and support for students during that time, but go ahead and follow the same structures and processes of the Century 21 after-school programs that are currently in place. In addition to that, we do know that that potentially won't work for all students. And so we are also exploring the possibility of doing virtual tutoring services, almost thinking of them more like office hours, where at each level, maybe it's elementary, middle, and high school, and a couple different teachers at each level, prioritizing English and math, where there is some time during an evening, 6:30 to 7:30 or 7 to 8, where students who potentially are at home working on things could jump onto a Zoom and get real-time help from a teacher who actually teaches the content that they're working on. In addition to that, we currently have 3 free online tutoring resources. Many of those, quite frankly, are geared more towards our secondary and high school folks, but they are available to all of our students. And so one of the things that we'll be doing right away is marketing and getting that word out to families about those opportunities that we have. For the after-school program and the tutoring that would go along with that, they are looking to launch that early in October. And so what we want to do is partner with our families around those fall conference times, looking at that data, that student performance data, how are the kids doing, what interventions are taking place during the school day, and that teachers can make some recommendations for families during that conference time so that families would be able to then join the after-school program tutoring services at that point. So Sarah, Amber, Corey, Paul, anything else that you'd like to throw in there?
I'll just throw in a little something. I mean, between Paul's synopsis, the great video from Diana, and your explanation, Mike, there's not a whole lot that I have to add, but I just want to share that I'm just really proud of our teachers and everyone lifting social emotional learning to new heights during the pandemic. We've been a district that has always been a strong supporter of social emotional learning, and it's been great to see the evolution happen through the pandemic as where we get this to all of our students, and the importance is just absolutely huge. Our counseling team and our coaching team last year at the elementary level worked really hard together in the spring to really unpack the Harmony curriculum that we have pre-K 5. And they developed and aligned and paced out the entire curriculum for all grade levels and all 6 units. And they packaged it into a slide deck that is easily consumable by any teacher in the district, and very easy for new teachers coming into the field, so we don't overwhelm them with prep. And so you can use the slide deck as is, or you can take it upon yourself to make it more personalized for your classroom and for your needs. So I just wanted to honor the work that went into that. We made great strides pre-K-12 last year in social emotional learning, and we look to do even more this year. So just thanks for the time and the opportunity.
Amber, Sarah, anything?
Yes, thank you to the board for letting me be here tonight to share with the team, and to Superintendent Paul Gordon and your leadership around this learning recovery plan. I want to also extend a huge thanks to our principals and teachers. Lifting off the start to this year has been incredibly taxing. And just the grit that we're seeing and the resilience with our teachers and modeling that for our students is so admirable. So it's a huge shout out. And I really want to underscore what Mike was saying. And thank you, Mike, for such a robust summary of the plan. What we are doing is so incredibly intentional. Everything in this plan has such intentionality. And I want to begin by just talking about the intentionality of collective efficacy and organizing and organization in highly functioning teams. These highly functioning teams are critical. We're wrapping around, meeting together regularly in our teams to find out what do each of our really important students need. How can we individualize for them? How can we intervene? How can we extend based on this data? And every team and every principal and all of us are focused on not just using instructional practices that work a little. We are wanting to leverage the instructional practices to have the most effect size. So for example, collective efficacy, when we organize in teams around students and look at data and adjust instruction regularly based on that data, that effect size has almost 4 years growth in 1 year's time. If you look up Dr. John Hattie's work around his effect size, it's a meta-analysis of the instructional practices to have the most impact. So everything in our plan has uber intentionality, and I just really want to bring that to the forefront. And our professional learning communities are learning to say, what instructional routines should we use across the system? They're going to have the most impact. And that's why you're going to see us doing cutting edge work around the science of reading and structured literacy, closing those gaps. Literacy is one of the most critical components of our work. It affects all of the subject areas. And so I just want to illuminate those points.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, I'm going to give you a no-look pass. Mike has coined that term. Could you just talk to us a little bit about what does that high-quality instruction look like? Amber touched on it a little bit there around structured literacy. From your standpoint as the director of curriculum and instruction professional development, what does that mean to you, and why is that so important in this plan, and how will it help accelerate and help students recover?
Absolutely. So as Mike alluded to in the beginning of his sharing, we are not backing up or slowing down to fill in gaps that students have at the beginning of the year, which is something traditionally that we would have done. We would have backed up and slowed down and really spent a lot of time filling those gaps. What we're doing is we are jumping right into the teaching of our rigorous grade level standards. And why are they rigorous? They're rigorous compared to our previous Washington standards before we adopted the Common Core. So the Common Core state standards are much more rigorous than what we had before. And we're aiming to provide really high quality grade level or above instruction to every single student, no matter what background they have, no matter what skill level they're at. We want to be teaching at that highest level or above, because we know that otherwise they are never going to catch up. So we can't take the time to teach below grade level standards to our students. We have to teach them on grade level and above. And then what we have to do is build in the scaffolding and the support. If they're not performing at grade level, we have to build in scaffolding and support to get them up there very quickly. And so that's what we're doing through really personalized instruction as we look at the data and we see their specific needs, and then we plan the interventions to meet those needs. And then, of course, teaching with high levels of engagement as well, because we know that without engagement, it's really hard to get them to move academically. So we feel really proud of the plan that we have. As we look at the interventions we're providing, the really strong core instruction, the extensions, and then coming up alongside all of that really heavy lifting work, the tutoring plan that we're putting into place. So we're really excited to see the growth, or to look forward to the growth that we're expecting to see. And we know that our community has a lot of challenges, our staff has a lot of challenges, but learning is our number one endeavor as an organization, and we are fully committed to doing our best with that, not slowing down, and just continuing to forge ahead.
Sarah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So as you can see, and I loved Amber's word, it's an intentional plan. There is the simplicity in that, you're right, it's not a 10, 15, 20 page document. I don't believe it needs to be. Actually, the research says it probably shouldn't be. It should really be a very concise plan about what are we doing. And what I believe parents want to know are these big pieces where I think sometimes we do a disservice in education. Is kind of giving everybody all the research, all the information, all of that stuff that, quite honestly, even when we look back in our original COVID plan, it was over 50 pages. I would wonder how many people actually read through page 4 of those. This is an intentional, focused, research-based plan that is being carried out today, tomorrow, and as we go forward. So I just want to highlight our educators. The learning and teaching team couldn't be more proud of, but it's a true collaboration. And that's something that Mike and Corey and Amber and Sarah have done a great job of bringing in principal leaders, our assistant principals, coaches, instructional specialists, teachers to the table to do this. So again, this was not Paul Gordon sitting in his office coming up with a plan and saying, hey, here it is. Haglin, make a video, make something pretty. This was the learning and teaching team really taking this on and spending significant time to develop this plan. So enough of us. I'll turn it over to the board.
And it is the board's floor now to ask questions and make comments.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate, the work that everybody put into the plan, and I do appreciate the commitment to rigor and keeping students at or above grade level learning. Paul, you mentioned, that we had a 50-page COVID plan and wondered, how many people read that. I think the point is that it's not really important how many people read it, but that the level of detail exists in the plan. So I hope that it does exist, and that it sounds like it, at least in concept. So it sounds like it is there. One thing in the presentation, I clicked on a link that was supposed to have some data, and I just clicked away from it. Oh, data snapshots of fall to spring. And I clicked on that, and it's a static document that just shows basically a screenshot, which is interesting. But I want to focus us on, and the board especially, on identifying the problem. What can we do to be really clear about it? Seems like we have this fall to spring data available, and can we have a presentation at the board that pinpoints where we're having the most difficulty? Is it across the board? Is it certain grade levels? Is it in math or reading more often than not? I do appreciate the endeavor keeping kids at grade level and above. I really do appreciate that approach. But for me, what's missing is more information about what the current situation is, so that as we go along, we can truly evaluate in a transparent fashion how successful we are with this approach. Thank you.
That's great. Laura, thank you for that. I think what I would comment is once we have that initial state assessment that's coming in a couple of weeks, that will be our first baseline. Because I think one of the things that we've done since I've been here, and I believe before, was we presented 3 different data sets on exactly where we're at in literacy and numeracy. We broke down by our Latino, our Caucasian, special ed, EL. We've had 3 very comprehensive breakdowns of where we were prior, but that's not COVID data. We should have that COVID data, hopefully. Again, I don't want to overpromise from the state. We'll have that state data in the coming weeks to months, to your point of kind of hopefully having that baseline of where we're currently at. And that will be coming from the state hopefully soon.
Well, I'm sorry, but correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm seeing in your screenshot is fall of 2020, September 2020 to May, June 2021. So that should tell us, should it not? Tell me where I'm wrong, where our students currently are. I get that we're talking about a fall baseline that we can go to compare to our prior academic year, and then moving forward. But what I'm asking is disaggregated data, maybe not to the level that you were just discussing, to help us pinpoint where right now the pinch points are.
Yeah, and Laura, we can do that. And so the screenshot that's on there was just to show you what an example of that potentially looks like. So we are planning to be transparent with the data. Like I said, that we are finishing iReady testing now. That'll give us a good set of data. That'll give us, quite frankly, more useful data than anything the state potentially is going to be giving us. And that's something we can come back to, much like we did in March when we were looking at the data from the winter there, but bring that back to the team, to the cabinet, to the school board, and report that out so we can be transparent and do that at least 3 times throughout the year. But most importantly for our teachers, our families, is doing that ongoing. So that's where you're looking at common formative assessment that those teacher teams are creating and comparing student performance and filling gaps in that way. But we can absolutely do what you're asking.
That's great, because I think what that shows is our accountability to the community as a whole. We're accountable to our current students and how we're addressing those, but we're accountable to the community for how we are accomplishing our goal of, creating the best and most well-rounded students that we possibly can. So enough of that.
Thank you, Laura.
I have a couple questions. So is this recovery plan applicable to our special education population? Okay.
Yes.
I see nods. Great.
Struggling with the mute button again.
Oh.
But Mike got us.
And then highly capable, we're kind of tend to focus on obviously this is a learning gap, a recovery plan, but I also think we need to not lose focus on our highly capable, our AP courses. What is and I know it's kind of early in the year, but what are those numbers looking like in regards to our identified highly capable, and how are we continuing to support, even though we're putting a lot of focus and attention on the learning gap and the recovery plan? So just kind of put it out there on the radar. Last year we got a presentation on our highly capable numbers, and maybe sometime down the future we can kind of take a look where we were, where we're at now, and also the diversification of our students being represented in the program.
Maria, could I say something real quick on that?
Yeah.
So one of the things that is beneficial about adopting an acceleration plan as opposed to a remediation plan is it meets students where they're at and takes them further than they need to be. So For example, when I was describing the process that second grade classroom was going into, extending learning for those students that were ready as part of that intervention plan as well. In addition to that, some of the extended learning options that we have are also available to our students who are on the higher end of the spectrum. For example, a couple of the free online tutoring options that we have specialize in AP classes. They specialize in helping students with college essay requirements and giving students the opportunity to submit some of their writing to them and get feedback from them before they actually would be submitting that to a college. So agreed that we need to pay attention to all students along our spectrum. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings up a really good point. This is where the equity piece comes in.
Yeah.
We are meeting students where they are, and we're giving them the individual supports that they need so that we can continue accelerate and bring our relevant students up. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Mike. In regards to the assessment that that the district's going to be using to identify where students are at. So I know iReady goes from elementary to middle school. Do we have that all the way up to the high school, or are we using state testing for the high school?
Amber, do you want to jump in and kind of talk about how we look at data more on the secondary side of things?
Yes, absolutely. So at the high school, we will be giving the Smarter Balanced assessment. So you're right, Maria. Also, once we get to high school, typically many high schools no longer use the universal screener or diagnostic approach. Once you get to ninth grade, it's sort of a tapping out kind of approach. So we more use end of unit assessments as those big benchmarks along the way. And I know I met with an English language arts team today at the high school, and they're currently giving their first benchmark assessment, which is very much focused on writing, essay writing. And so that's the measure that we'll be using at the high school. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it for me right now.
I just want to chime in that, you know, I really appreciate that we have iReady and iMath. I think we were using it pre-COVID. Was it about a year before? Who knew that we weren't going to have state testing not only in March of 2020, but also March of or spring of 21, right? So we've actually had 2 years where we haven't had the state testing that we've typically had, but it's been really wonderful to see what we have through iReady for our math and reading. And I just appreciate that we have those assessment tools, particularly for our younger students. So we were, I think, lucky that we had those programs already in place and that we had some data. So I just wanted to say, yay, hooray, we had something already in the works, even though we didn't have our state tests done.
So my turn.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you to putting this presentation together to everybody. I know I really appreciate the attention to it, because I think what was missing for me is we heard parts of a plan, or what we thought the plan would be in March, along with some really scary data about our failure rates and engagement rates and things like that. So I think what was really helpful to this was to hear the how we're implementing it. I think that's the piece that the parents wanted to hear is what are the staff resources going into it? What are the programs that we're focusing on? What are the statistical measurements that we're using, or the testing that we're using? So that was helpful to hear. I appreciate that. And the tutoring, thank you for answering my question if we're going to have tutoring available, or how we're going to identify students to get into those areas. I think that helps answer a lot of the questions out there. I think that would have been almost more helpful to see in the summary form. But I do appreciate the keeping it simple and the sort of the goal look. What I'm interested in a little bit is, I think we developed these plans largely thinking we were going to have a lot more seat time than is appearing to be the case, or a lot more resources and teaching staff and whatnot in the fall than may be the case right now. And I'm wondering what elements of the plan, or maybe this is for a future meeting, are things going to need to change because we don't have resources that we thought we were going to have? We're using a lot of, it sounds like, testing data to determine where students are at and what they may need. So if a student's out with COVID or out on a quarantine and prolonged potentially because it's maybe running through the family, and there's no Zoom options, when are they going to test? How are we getting their data back? How does that impact what the state is going to tell us? I assume that maybe needs to be factored into some level that isn't right now, because I think that's a variable we didn't expect this amount of disruption at the start of the fall as well. So I'm very thankful to hear the details that have gone into this. I think that answers a lot of questions. Now I think the questions remain in what do we need to fine tune now to make sure that we're accomplishing those goals with this, with these new kind of COVID issues?
No, great question. So Julie, I'll start with the first thing that you mentioned around probably some more detail around the tutoring, the intervention services. Mike and his team will be putting that out shortly with some of those opportunities right now online. So that will be going out in the coming days, week, to inform the community. So I appreciate that feedback. You're right. I think what we've learned is we've got to be fluid again. We didn't think I thought we were going to be a little bit more stable, but the 11, 12, 13 days that we've been in have been unstable. And one of the big factors is, how will students take the state assessment? Are they going to allow for some online assessment? In past, they've never allowed a student to take that type of assessment in their home. And I can't imagine they're going to open that up anytime soon. But that's where we really need to be super flexible, and why we're so focused on our data. But your question's a good one. What about those students who may miss the window of assessment? So we will make sure we have the exact answer, unless Mike and team already have that answer for you.
Oh yeah, I can talk a little bit.
Thank
about
you.
That. So getting the iReady data is of the utmost importance. And last year, at the beginning of last year, one of the things we did is allow students to take those from home when we were fully online. The data we got back was not as reliable as it normally is for obvious reasons, but that is potentially an option that we could use for a student who, like Julia, like you're talking about, where I'm out for this amount of time and then my sibling is out for this amount of time, but so that I'm still exposed in the house and I'm not coming back. That data is super helpful, not only for the tier 1, tier 2 interventions that are going to go on a daily basis, but also for our adaptive computer software that we use. We use the iReady math program, we use the Lexia ELA program, and we need that data so we can get students appropriately placed, because those programs will monitor their progress and adjust as needed. So even a student who potentially is at home on quarantine has the ability to get some individualized support and attention. And the other thing I would just say is, I don't want to give the impression that that zooming into a classroom is suddenly off the table. That is not the case. It is definitely one of the options that can work if it's going to work between the student and their parents, obviously, and the teacher. That is definitely an option. It's not the best option in all cases, but for some cases, it is definitely a viable option. It is still on the table.
Thank you, Mike. Martin, I think
I
you're.
really have nothing to add. I think we've had very helpful amplification from staff. Thank you very much. I guess I'm going to comment that you called it a roadmap because it is a journey. It's going to go on for a long time. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking of an Olympic steeplechase race, 5,000, 10,000 meters, rather than everybody being in the starting blocks and we've got a plan. You're going to have to jump hurdles, get across water jumps, and that's what you're doing. So it's not a once-off, I guess is what I was running to say. And we need to all recognize that. That will take more energy, more resources, more resilience. This is a strong start with clear identification of priorities. So thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll keep coming back. We'll keep informing the board where we're at and how we're doing as we go down this. The last little piece that I would add outside of our acceleration and recovery plan is the recognition of where we're at as we're in 13 days of school. It is very different than what any of us were hoping for. The amount of COVID cases, quarantines, staff, students across the board has made a significant impact within our organization and every other school district that I know of in the state of Washington and in other places. So my shout out is to the entire organization, our parent, our guardians, really helping us navigate through this again, a time that nobody has been able to go through before. So we continue to learn, we continue to grow, but I couldn't be more pleased with our staff, with the people in this organization, our parent community, and the community at large by helping us move this forward. Somebody said earlier, we're on Team Kids. That's kind of where I was at a couple of weeks ago in my closing statements. We are on one team. And I loved what that individual said. It is about kids. That is our focus. That is the school district's focus, is making sure that we do right by our kids and we do right by our staff and our community. I'm excited about this work, but I'm excited about knowing that we've got such incredible people who are helping us, just like tonight's board meeting, giving us thoughtful feedback and how to make all of our work better. I could not be more proud of our staff, our parents, and our community as we try to navigate this pathway forward. So that's it for me. Thank you. Martin, you're muted.
The school board will now recess into executive session for a period of 30 minutes to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review the performance of a staff member pursuant to district policy number 1410 and RCW 42.30.110. This discussion will be closed to the public. The school board is not expected to take final action following the executive session. So now we need to move, with Ron's help, into closed space.
Okay, so
And
give it a
board will
second for the stream to go, and I'll end that, and you guys can take like a 1 minute here, and I'll pass the baton to Paul.
Let's go 5 minutes.
Break.
5 minutes? Okay. 5 minutes. I need some water. Thank you. We'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes time then. And Laura, if you're there, you're 2 hours or so behind us. My sympathy.